Right now, in a province called Alberta in Canada, the free people there have made more serious strides than ever before towards secession. Over the course of decades, the people, through their elected representatives, have threatened secession from Canada several times. In years past, every time Alberta has made it so far in the formal legal process, they've backed off for one reason or another, because they don't want to damage the Canadian nation or Canadian people, and certain concessions have been made to their benefit. Alberta is the primary revenue generator for the entire country. They understand that they have a responsibility to others in their nation. However, they also recognize, as they have for generations, that their wealth has been taken for granted, used in ways of which they disapprove by their national government, and their grievances are not and have not been adequately addressed by their government according to their judgment. They've had enough. The Albertans are ready to form their own national government and peacefully extricate themselves from Canada. According to our Declaration of Independence, they have the unalterable, unalienable, natural right to do this. Addressing the entire world, Thomas Jefferson spoke on behalf of all free peoples everywhere when he declared, in part, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness." It's my contention that any reasonable mind can grasp that concept and must find it inarguable. Our framers were not the only or even the first ones to ever have that notion. They were, as far as I know, the first to speak of it so eloquently. Albertans are not the first people, since those words were so eruditely written, to decide it's time to throw off their government and to institute in its place one that to them seem like it will suit their desires of government better. Once upon a time, a group of Americans also decided that they no longer wanted to be part of a union that they were simply born into. Slavery existed in America, codified by law, for over 100 years, having caused no war. Also, for almost 100 years, states had operated peacefully within the framework of our Constitution according to the dictates of our federal government. No war. Grievances were voiced and went unaddressed with no war. Economic hardships were suffered by a free people, and political redress was sought with varying degrees of success, causing no war. Voices, alarms, and heckles were raised due to those perceived abuses without war. Secession was threatened, worked toward, and backed away from time and time again, all of that with no war. That kind of means that the slavery that existed for the previous 100 years couldn't have been the cause of a war, doesn't it? Maybe it was used as a pretext for war, not the actual cause. At some point, certain Americans also had had enough. They decided to put an end to their perceived abuses by their federal government peacefully. Through their elected body's politics, they seceded. Their former government, in a decision made by one man, decreed that war would be waged before he would allow those states to peacefully coexist with their former counterparts. The American nation was plunged into so-called civil war. Secession, even the talk of secession, is serious, potentially lethal business. For all its faults, I believe, and really dearly pray, that the Canadian government is far more sophisticated and civilized than Abraham Lincoln was. While we're taught in the American pantheon that Lincoln is our Cicero, I believe it to be untrue. In my opinion, few villains in all of human history displayed such zealotry for war and unmitigated deprivation of human rights and decency than did Abraham Lincoln. In fact, never prior in human history was total war waged even against a king's or nation's enemies, much less one's own people. Stalin didn't do that. Hitler didn't do that. Mao, all of the list of history's worst people, Genghis Khan, none of them waged total war on their own people, except for Lincoln. I wish you could ponder that for just a moment. America still suffers the effects of one man's decision that a free people ought not govern themselves as they see fit. I cannot imagine a world where the worst judgment ever exercised on the part of a nation's leader would be duplicated, especially in today's information age. America had the right to secede from Great Britain. She tried to do so peacefully, but when war was brought to her shores, she was blessed with a victory. The Confederate States of America had the right to secede. When war was brought to them, they fought gallantly, but ultimately failed in their struggle for sovereignty. The Albertan people have the right to secede. I sincerely hope the Canadian government is wise enough and merciful enough to allow them to peacefully coexist, rather than wage war against their own people for having the audacity to choose to govern themselves as they see fit.